When I think about 30 years, I think I can't believe how the time has flown. It's both amazing to have reached 30 years, but also, as a co-founder, I still feel like we have so much more to do.
I mean, my gosh, what a renaissance. We created this place. This is a unique place we created. I don't know that it exists anywhere else in the world.
What I've said in the past is that in some ways it's a love story, because I married Tim, who's a virologist. When I was diagnosed with chronic hepatitis B, instead of panicking, he decided to change his whole focus of research to search for a cure for hepatitis B. And he went to our friends Paul and Jan Whitty, who are local, well-known humanitarians and philanthropists, and was sharing this story with them. And they immediately said, we have to do something.
In the very early days, the Whittys were really supportive and instrumental financially and, with hard work. They're a big part of how the foundation started to get some legs under it.
The virus had been discovered by Baruch Blumberg and his colleagues. And Blumberg and his colleagues made a vaccine, so it was preventable. There were no therapies, that's for sure.
At that time, hepatitis B was treated like HIV. I lost my job. My child was kicked out of daycare. The hospital was trying to figure out what to do with me because they had no policies.
When we first started, there was very, very low awareness about hepatitis B. Almost people didn't know anything about Hep B. There was no education happening. There was no policy focus or advocacy. And we didn't have any FDA-approved drugs.
And then there's a lot of fear. Am I going to die young? What do I tell my family members? How can I still work? Or if I want to can I become a nurse? Can I travel? Can I get a travel visa? Can I get a work visa? I mean, these are real issues. In a lot of countries, you cannot work. You cannot get a visa to that country if you have hepatitis B.
Initially, we started, as just a virtual organization, got a phone number, took telephone calls from other individuals, patients usually, who were interested.
Somehow it was amazing that patients found us. When we put up our website in 1995, it literally opened us up to the world.
Our mission at the Hepatitis B Foundation is, one, to find a cure for hepatitis B, but also to improve the life of all those living with hepatitis B worldwide. So almost 300 million people who we feel responsible for, helping them find access to care and treatment, helping them feel better about living with hepatitis B and live longer.
I went to work with Baruch Blumberg, the Nobel laureate. I went to him and asked him early on, even before there was a foundation, would you help us? And of course, he was extremely supportive. And he was so nice and so humble.
The reason I got involved with the Hepatitis B Foundation was because it had the promise, when it first got started, of being an important center for hepatitis B research.
The mission has always been the same. So when we started, we were ambitious because our goal was to cure hepatitis B.
Living with chronic hepatitis B is like living with a time bomb. You never know when the disease is going to result in liver cancer, liver failure.
I saw a statistic today, less than 1% of the people in the world who have chronic hepatitis B are treated, and a little bit more than that are followed by screening. This is a terrible disease if it's not managed, and it's absolutely preventable. If you have chronic hepatitis B, now you can be screened, and the cancer can be monitored, and you can be treated.
For 10 years, we held a patient conference. What we learned from that was the amount of discrimination that was occurring.
We received a phone call from a woman who had just given birth a few days before. And this was a woman in the US who has chronic hepatitis B. When she was leaving the hospital, the nurse said to her, because you have hepatitis B, you can't go near your baby. You can't touch your child, you can't feed your child, and you can't hug or kiss your child. And so she called us in a state of despair. You can't transmit hepatitis B casually. There was no reason why she couldn't love and hold and cuddle and kiss and feed and take care of her baby. And so we talked her through it. And at the end of the conversation, she was a different person.
In 2001, my wife and I adopted our son from the Ukraine. Upon getting back to the United States, we discovered that he tested positive for hepatitis B. We started looking for resources to help us understand the disease. And my wife actually found the Hepatitis B Foundation online and had someone call me from the foundation, a very nice woman, to talk me off the ledge about my concerns. We're lucky we had a good ending to our story, but there are plenty of people that don't have a good ending. And that's why I stayed involved. And, we're working towards finding a drug to cure this disease.
The growth of the Hepatitis B Foundation over the past 30 years into a dynamic global organization serving the 300 million people around the world living with hepatitis B, as well as their families, their healthcare providers, and society at large, is an amazing success story.
The Hepatitis B Foundation has been instrumental in making hepatitis B part of the conversation, nationally and globally. We have been instrumental in prioritizing hepatitis B at the federal level, putting together a grassroots advocacy network of thousands of people to help make sure that there's enough money to address hepatitis B at the public health and at the clinical research level.
We've played a role in moving some companies to researching hepatitis B. We've played probably the decisive role in legislation involving anti-discrimination against hepatitis B.
On one of the first World Hepatitis Days, we were invited to the White House, and it was incredibly memorable to me. For the first time, the White House was recognizing hepatitis B as an urgent public health priority.
Then, of course, there's the creation of our research institute, now called the Baruch S. Blumberg Institute. The finest minds in the world have come to our center to start new companies.
I listen to the scientists, and the scientists are optimistic that we will have a functional cure for hepatitis B within the next 5 to 10 years. If they're optimistic, I'm optimistic.
The future for the Hepatitis B Foundation is to make sure the following, that we greatly increase the number of people who are screened for liver disease, greatly increase the number of people who are treated, and make sure that there is another wave of hepatitis B and liver cancer therapeutics in 5 years.
The prize, the ring you want to grab at the end of the day is the complete cure for the disease, for hepatitis B.
Our success is due to the quality and the commitment of the people who are working with us. They chose to work with us, and we could not have achieved as much as we have in the past 30 years without the real dedication and commitment of these people, and of course the donors.
Individual donors are probably the most critical people that we have. It is one of the most important sources of funds for us. We really want to thank all of our supporters and our donors. We couldn't do it without them.
I hope people give to the Hepatitis B Foundation and the Blumberg Institute because they believe in us. They know that what we're doing for people with chronic hepatitis B and liver cancer is almost unique, that we've proven our track record, and that we're the best hope for a nonprofit organization to reach people with chronic hepatitis B. We're the best hope there is. I walk into the lab every day and I see this 3-building, 120,000 square foot complex with 200 scientists and outreach professionals working. And they're here because we did this. It's quite overwhelming.
If we want to eliminate hepatitis B and we want to save lives, then people need to demand action. If we could get every one of those 300 million people who have Hep B, if they shared a little bit of their voice, can you imagine the difference we would make?